podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
From punches thrown to uppercutting of rivals, this is a weekend worth analysing. Let's start the show. Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Interpro Show, your home for all things Irish rugby from across the professional, amateur, men's and women's game in Ireland. I am once again joined by Ben and David as Ulster Adam recovers from a bout of illness that mysteriously meant I was on the URC show this week. Very mysterious. Excuse me. Before we get into it, lads, I'd like to ask about your weeks and how things have gone, given how it wasn't the best for Leinster. David, I'll start with yourself. Um, a good crowd in Croke Park, a good feel-good atmosphere. You know, that it was a bit of a wet day, but it could be worse. It was a nice day out at the very least.
I don't know what match you were watching, Kellen. It was atrocious. It was horrific. I think everyone
I
involved
didn't
will
mean the
forget it ever
match. I just
happened.
meant a nice day out with friends.
No, it was lovely. I went with my mum. It was a great day. Croker, not as full as we like to see, but fuller, I think, than some people expected it to be. The hill was alive. The Cusack stand where I was hopping. Obviously the upper Hogan across the way was empty, but no, by and large, it's a good atmosphere. Yeah, it's nice to get people down to the to Dublin's lovely north side on occasion, and yeah, no, there was a lot of people happy to be out of a Saturday. How many of them were happy to be out by the end of it? Opinions differ on that one, but no, it was a nice day out. It is a nice way to mark the biggest rivalry in Irish rugby. Um, but yeah, no, great day. The only thing that would have made it better is if we could have sold out the stadium. But sure, look, we can have a conversation about ticket pricing another time.
Yeah, well, there's a whole block of November internationals that we can get into that if we really want to. But Ben, I know you're smiling. You've got the Munster flag behind you. You got, a Munster top on. But I'm not going to ask about that. I'm going to ask about a team who wears blue, who you were also happy with, and not because Leinster lost, but because your beloved Treaty United have made it to the playoffs of the League of Ireland Premier Division, or League of Ireland First Division, I should say. So a very good weekend for you because you also have the misfortune of Sporting United.
Yeah, lads, if Carlsberg did sporting weekends, I'm telling you. Like, walk Friday night down in Wexford, which is, by the way, I know there's Wexford friends of the podcast. It's some distance away from Limerick, lads. Ferry Carry Park's in the middle of nowhere. Treaty United going down, game we had to draw, getting a lovely 2-0 win, getting into the playoffs, taking on the mighty Cove Ramblers on Friday. Come on, Treaty United. United winning on Sunday, the aforementioned wonderful, wonderful result of Saturday. That can't be any better. Genuinely cannot be any better.
Well, I think the only way that I can add to it is I was in Croke Park, which is always great. It's one of the best venues in the world. And I also got paid at the weekend. So I think that makes up for it by quite a bit. But we will start, as I said, on Jones's Road, where Munster came, they saw, they conquered. They were the hunter, as Clayton McMillan asked them to be. They defeated Leinster 31-14 in emphatic style. First Interpro of the season. For most Interpros, to the victors will go the spoil and the opening remarks. And Ben, this was not on people's radar because even if you park whether who you thought would win or who you thought would play well, no one would have said Munster would go 77 minutes of this game leading 31 to nil.
Exactly. Look, just go 31 points without reply against any team is incredible. To do it against Leinster is next level good. To do it in Croke Park, has any team gone that high in Croke Park without conceding?
Tipperary in the All Ireland hurling final, perhaps.
You know what? That's fair. Cork also know that pain. Look, I mean, it's easy to sit here and say Munster were excellent and Leinster didn't show up. But in terms of a game of rugby, from start to finish, ebbed and flowed, tremendous game. Munster's game plan was out of this world good. Jack Crowley dominated from start to finish. His kicks over the top, as Tom Farrell's try, which I'm sure we will come to. Can't ask for any more. Tyke Byrne, my opinion, was man of the match. He turnover machine, maul machine, held up anything they came. He wasn't completing tackles. He was just holding up guys for fun. He was giving them hugs and talking to them about their weekends while getting the ball off them.
He was plugging Blackrock Hair Restoration Clinic while he was over them in the bottom of a ruck. But
Blackrock on one side, Debo's whiskey on the other side. It's all
yeah, exactly. Unfortunately, David, we do have to ask you about this, and I know it's not easy, but to be fair, you're never anything more than a good winner or anything more or less than a good winner or a good loser. And in this instance, a very rare one for Leinster because we've seen them lose big games before. We've seen them lose in October before. But this level of an uppercut, as I said earlier, is so rare. This was a total knockout. And to say that Leinster were off colour, we spoke about it before we hit record, almost feels like you're selling it short.
Yeah, if anything, this was a perfect storm. This was a Leinster who were undercooked. They were under motivated. Half of the squad didn't look like they 100% wanted to be there, which is just unforgivable for a match like this. And you pair that with a Munster who were so up for it, you thought some of their heads were going to explode at times. It was, you know, I actually felt at the end, we were happy enough to get the try at the end. It does make you feel a little bit better when you do get that, but I honestly thought it put an unfair tint to the scoreline because 30, if you just look on paper, 31-14 isn't the worst scoreline in the world. It's one penalty kick from a two-score game. It looks like four tries to two. Yeah, dominant, but not over the top. But the level of control that Munster exercised over that game, in the first half it was attack, in the second half it was defence, and Leinster had no answer to it. The intensity of Munster's their fight, Jack Crowley controlling the attack, his kicking. He had 28, I think it was 28 kicks from hand that Munster had to Leinster's 13. They just controlled the pitch, completely defanged the Leinster um, blitz defense, which was, the obviously strongest example of that was the lovely chip over the top that Tom Farrell controlled beautifully for Munster's second try. Then you pair that in the second half, Leinster try to carry it a little bit more straight up, and Tyburn just goes over the top every chance he gets. I think he had five of their turnovers by himself, which is an insane number for a single player to rack up. And you pair that against a Leinster team where you had Jefferson Gibson Park half the time didn't seem to know which direction he wanted to pass the ball. Sam Prendergast being caught on the back foot, difficult for any out half. But on a day like that, just an extra level of struggle. And like Leinster were the missing players, they don't have Joe McCarthy, they don't have Caelan Doris, they don't have Hugo Keenan, but they had power. They had Andrew Porter, they had Dan Sheehan, we had um, you know, Josh van der Fleer in the back row. You have James Gibbs Park. So it's not to say that this was an underpowered Leinster against a super strong Munster. These are two teams who on paper should have given us a much more even fight than this. And we're not used to seeing Munster completely control a match against Leinster to this degree, but on this day they did, and it was a humbling experience for me as a supporter. I can only imagine it was as humbling experience for the players. But if it's going to be the wake up call that Leo Cullen claims it is, then it's long overdue because given the context of the first three matches of the season, this really has to be a moment where Leinster look at it and go, lads, we need to start doing something differently, and possibly looking at Munster for a bit of inspiration.
Yeah, they really do. And like you look through those stats there, and I had to pull it off the page because an ad popped up, but just in case we got, any restrictions. But it was just you read it, and to the untrained eye, Leinster dominated, but they weren't really because the same thing we'll talk about Connacht later. There was a lack of potency. Leinster struggled to break Munster down. They went, we'll just run over them, run over them, run over them. But the only issue is they were playing Munster, and yes, they've done this before and it's worked. But this time they were playing a Munster team with a Tyke Byrne playing like a man possessed. He's one of the best defensive players to ever play in Ireland. Like that's how good his threat is around the breakdown, around mauls. I've long said I think he's the best maul defender in the game for quite some time. I think the only one who puts an arm around him is Maro Itoje. Like, and he was a disruptor the whole way through. But Munster's effort, like Ethan Coughlin has a dominant tackle. And yeah, if you're so inclined to be like, oh, it's on Sam, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter who it's on. He hit him. It was like Henson on Tate back in 2005. I know that's way back now, but like that square hit him in the stomach, blow him out of proportions. Like that's what Munster did this whole way through the game. And like I was there, I had a good vantage point up in the Hogan. Cold spot, very cold spot, I will say. A real breeze comes in off that hill. I won't lie. You might look into that there, David, if you don't mind when you get a chance. But
Had a few
from
seagulls up to keep
everything,
you warm.
honest to God, but like we said it before we started here, like Munster won all the moments. They had all these things. Like Byrne was excellent, Crowley was excellent, Dan Kelly was Dan Kelly, like Finney Wycherley. Like maybe if we have a little bit of time, in a couple of weeks. We'll talk about players who've really stood out. He has been one of the best provincial players in the URC so far this season, and he backed it up here. Dogbo and Gleeson are getting a lot of praise as they should. They were excellent, but like the fact that Munster went and played a very similar game plan to Northampton and took their chances like Northampton did, and Leinster just didn't have an answer. The only difference was they looked cold this time, whereas that Northampton game they obviously didn't. They were in the middle of a busy block of the season. This time they looked stone cold and nothing was going their way. And I think what was really disappointing was you looked at the Irish lads, drag us out of a hole. Gibson Park had one of the worst games I've ever seen him play. He has a high standard of games. I'm not saying otherwise.
Like that's not a
But
criticism. He had a
it's
poor game by his standards.
by
But
his
like,
standards. Like Henshaw and Ringrose were not at their best. And, the back row and the second row. And like again, if you had said to a Munster fan, you'd win a period 31-0, they'd have bitten your hand off. If you'd have said to anyone that Finney Wycherley would be the best second row on the pitch and Ethan Coughlin would be the best nine, I genuinely think he would have been laughed. Not out of town, not out of the country, out of the continent. No one would have believed you. But that's the level of performance Munster put in. And Ben, to come back to you, like it's so easy when you discuss games to go, here's who played well, here's who played well, here's who played well. But Tyg Byrne, Jack Crowley, I know for Byrne he's a big game player anyway, but Crowley has answered any critics that were left. Like, I understand that this New Zealand game will be on a broadcaster who have not been his biggest fan, to put it mildly, and I think everyone would agree with that. But there is no critics left to be had of this man after that performance. Kicked off his right, kicked off his left, ran the game, a try assist, was one of Munster's top tacklers. Couldn't ask for much else. And then Tyg Byrne was Tyg Byrne.
like as David mentioned, just for Jack, we Munster 28 kicks in play. We kicked for 800 meters. Retained 6 of our own kicks. I mean, I know there's questions around Jack's off the boot, around Jack off the tee, but he answered every single one of those kicks on Saturday and then some. The way he ran that back line outside of Coughlin, who I think every Munster fan we saw Coughlin on the team was a little bit like, this is possibly too big a step up for him. He's very good, but this is going into the Lions den. Jack outside him helped him every step along the way. Not that Coughlin wasn't excellent, but Jack provided that level of calming experience aside him that you want from your 10 that unfortunately the other 10 didn't get from his 9. They're meant to dovetail. And also, we've all mentioned it already, but what more can you want from Tyg Byrne? I mean, he's a turnover machine. He's tackling every single thing that moves. If there was any question that he wasn't starting in the Irish team, which I know there was from certain quarters, that has now been answered. Tyg Byrne is starting. Jack Crowley should very much be starting. And I'm glad we haven't gone down to, it's all about the 10s. We're not having the 10 conversation on this podcast, nor should we. Sam also was very good on Saturday. And I don't want anyone to be like, Sam had a poor game, because he did not. Jack just ran that Munster game as well as he could. The game plan focused on him, let him show off exactly what he can do. And he was instrumental in Munster getting over that line against, admittedly, a Leinster team who looked very off the boil by their own standards.
Yeah, they did. And I think that's what's most concerning is just the fact that Munster's Ireland players stood up to be counted. Leinster's did not. And to be fair, I will say, watching it live, I thought Robbie Henshaw did all right. I thought Josh Fleer did all right. I thought Jamie Osborne played well. Watching it back, Munster really just pulled him from pillar to post. Like it was a really tough afternoon for him. But he did well, but he was just pulled around the park, which is not really his fault.
And like Leinster had 65% possession in this game. If you showed that when you mentioned it, show that to anyone who didn't see it, you're going to say, how in the name of God Leinster only scored 14 points in this game?
And 11-22 entries.
Like a lot of Leinster's ball was like watching Munster in a European game from 2 years ago, where we just go left, right, back, left, right, and hope there's a hole somewhere, which was so, and I don't like saying it, but it was so on Leinster. That Munster were, as you said, the hunter, not the hunted, and we were mean, and they got in the faces of anyone who had ball. But it was just, I'm sure David will back me up on this, it was so uncharacteristically Leinster. It's not what we expect. And we're seeing it almost too often this season that this is what Leinster are doing with ball in hand.
Yeah. It was very frustrating. looking at the stats after that, as you said, I actually have the Leinster's possession at 69% and the territory at the same level as well. Um, they had
These things do fluctuate depending on when you read them and where, to be fair. But
Yeah,
it's in around
this
that
is from the
65 to
URC's
70.
website, but
Yeah.
16 lineouts won, 100% lineout success rate, six scrums won, 86% scrum success. They were winning scrum penalties. They had a platform. We had a platform. We were in the 22. We were camped out for ages, had so much possession, and didn't seem to have a plan beyond that. It was just one out runner after one out runner. There didn't seem to be, and it was weird because it contrasted a lot with even how Leinster played last week. Now you have to caveat that by saying the Sharks are not good opposition. They've been very poor this season, irrespective of what players they have on the pitch. But there was a bit of inventiveness about what Leinster were doing there. Most of the tries they got over in that game, the players involved got over untouched because of the lines they were running and the holes they were finding. There wasn't any of that in this game. This was just one out runner after one out runner after one out runner, hoping they would eventually get past. And because Munster had brought such intense physicality and had this incredible edge to their defense, it just went nowhere. And eventually they run out of energy and they make a mistake, or Ty Burn comes in and turns the ball over. So I think that was what was most frustrating. It wasn't even like they were starved. They had loads of possession. They had loads of opportunity. They had a chance in that second half to, as we said, the scoreline ended up 31-14, but it was 21-7 going in. They had all the chance in the world to level it up or to bring it back within the score and just failed to capitalize on any of it. And that will be a major source of frustration because you know there's only so much you can do with a little ball, but Munster were able to do more with much less. And I think that'll be something to ruminate on from the Leinster dressing room.
Yeah, and I'm conscious of not following the route of other podcasts and doing an hour on this game and nothing on the rest. We won't do that, don't get me wrong. But I think when you mentioned that there and like championship minutes being important, Munster Munster's last win in Dublin, 2023 URC semi-final. The talk of everyone at halftime was Munster have not taken their chances. It's gonna come back to bite them. They've been camped in the Leinster line. They have not scored. I think it was 7-5 at halftime in that game or
Yeah.
something like that. It will come back to bite them. Weirdly, we've never seen this be the case, but this was Leinster this time. They had their chances. They did not take them. And even the intercept try, and we should probably do a piece on the Farrell try to be fair, because it's an unbelievable score. But the intercept is just, as you said, it's one out runners. And it's good lines. Van der Fleer runs a good line. Osborne runs a good line. They're running at soft shoulders. They're doing all right. But it is very easy for Munster to defend. And then when Gibson Park gets ambitious, because Coughlin know what's going to happen. He knows Gibson Park will always throw that second or third pass. And if there's one thing that I fundamentally don't believe about Gibson Park, and I heard it last year in the Six Nations, is, oh, or no, sorry, it wasn't during Six Nations. It was during a Munster game last year of, oh, Casey throwing that Gibson Park like skip pass. Even though he does take that step and he does often hit the third man, I do think that's his biggest weakness. He's got the zip in it, but every once in a while, when he's on the back foot, those passes go astray. This one, he took too long. Coughlin bites in, he's gone. And like, again, you don't see those moments go the other way too often, but we did see them go the other way with Pollock's try against Leinster that time and moments like that. And I do want to focus on one of the positives, which was the Tom Farrell try and the Tom Farrell call up, which is absolutely huge. Ben, the try, first of all, look, if you're a line out nerd like me, you're looking at a Dogbo's lift and Barron's throw being perfect, and then the rest of it just falls into place. But as good of a try as you'll see until we talk about the Tom Stewart try a little bit later on in Ulster's game.
No, I mean, look, as you mentioned, every single part of it was perfect. From a much maligned line out of Munster over this season to get a Dogbo up as well as he does. The throw is pitch perfect. Coughlin's pass to Crowley. I saw some other media outlet call it a poor pass. What? It is pitch perfect. Crowley doesn't have to move an inch.
But the design is that he's not there to hit the line. He's there to let the line come to him because he has got four runners. Make
Exactly.
them decide.
He has that step back, he lets people come through him, and then just a little dink over. And I do actually feel kind of bad for O'Brien, because he has judged it really well. He
Yeah,
gets distracted by, was it Lowe who's running towards him and on the tracking
yeah,
line?
it was. Yeah,
He simply takes his eye off it for a second to make sure he doesn't get cleaned by his own man. And
or by Farrell
or
as
by
well.
Farrell. Wonderful take, wonderful finish. Um, the Ireland call up is something that, and I missed the podcast last Wednesday. Sorry to anyone who cares. I missed that last week. But look, he was Munster Player of the Season last year. I think we were all a little bit surprised he didn't get a call up. Maybe not so much in the main Irish squad, but certainly on a training panel based on how he's performed semi-recently. Deserves every bit of it. Hopefully he gets a game against Japan. Hopefully he comes back to us in the same way he's left us, most importantly, because he's so important to this Munster team. Every single thing he does, he's by far, I know Dan Kelly's been great, but I think Tom Farrell's our best centre by some distance. And he showed it again on Saturday. Every single thing he does for this team. So
And
good.
David, this may be a very stupid question to ask, but it does feel like this is the most popular Ireland call up in a long, long time. Like everyone from the players to the staff, well, maybe not Ireland staff, but like coaching staff to fans, everyone was team Tom Farrell. And when that announcement goes out, no one like God love him, Jim O'Brien's a good player. No one's reading that part. It's all about, oh my God, Tom Farrell got called up, which is very cool to see because as much as we get caught up in selection chat and whatever, it's great to have a story like this. We want more of them, but it is great to have a moment like this.
It's a lovely moment. It was funny that they actually put Junior O'Brien's picture on the announcement, and yeah, as you say
They
yourself, he
kind of
very,
had to be fair. They don't
very
have a
much.
file. It's not
They
a
don't
Tom
have a
Farrell
picture.
picture.
I think he could probably dig one up. He was in a Joe Schmidt camp way back
That's
when.
true.
But no, I mean, I think Farrell's kind of the perfect mix in that he's originally from Dublin, so we got that.
Hey,
He was in Connacht for years playing lovely rugby out west. He's now in Munster. He's been shot out of a cannon from day one. He was your player of the season last year, and he started this season as he's meant to continue. And it's that kind of is his moment gone past? He's in his 30s and he hasn't got a cap yet, and it's in a position where we have a lot of strength. So it feels like the deck is very much stacked against him. The initial squad goes out, he's not in it. He wasn't in the squad over the summer. That kind of feels like, oh, if there was going to be a moment, that moment was now, and his moment has passed. And then he goes out, he has this superb performance against Leinster on a Saturday, and then disc unconnected, not directly unconnected, but not really connected either. In that we have a couple of injuries in the center, and suddenly it's like we can actually do with an extra guy in the center. Who else are we going to call up but Tom Farrell? So yeah, no, that was nice to see the fact they put out the footage of him coming into camp, and getting the fist, the grasp, the handshake from all the players. That was nice. It is a nice unifying figure. I don't think there's anybody, even at player level, anybody in Ireland who could begrudge him that. And there's people from at least two provinces, three if we're being charitable, who'll be very happy to see him in there. So yeah, no, it was a good moment. And like, at the end of the day, you're getting a Rolls Royce of a 13 into the squad at a point when we could probably really do with a little bit more depth in that position. So, you know, um, long may it continue. Let's see how he goes. And yeah, we would love to see him get some actual minutes in November, because I think he could do, if he can do in a green shirt what he did in a red shirt and a different kind of green shirt, then it can only be a good thing for Ireland.
and even if he does turn around and say, like, I'm retiring at the end of the season, everyone wants to see him in an Ireland shirt. Like they really do. Like the only person that I could say it could come close to is I do think in 2023, if Sean Claney got called up, people would have loved it. Because I don't think much people were happy with how his Ireland career ended. In the main, yes, there's still that kind of fake bad blood thing about the toner pick, but that's the only one I could compare to. I don't remember any other call up quite like this, where everyone is just like, "Oh my God, thank God, we're so happy, great to see him in there." And Tom Farrell comes across a lovely guy, as most of them do, but it's great to see. But just before we move on to Ulster, who I assume was the fourth province that David didn't mention when he said three of the four, um,
Not because they
we
hate him, just because they don't give a
they don't have a title.
shit.
He
It's
just
absolutely fine.
exists somewhere.
Somewhere James Hume is stewing. No, yeah.
Yeah, well, look, James Hume had a cracking game. We'll get on to that in 2 minutes. But before we do, make sure to subscribe to this channel to get all the latest Global Game Line podcasts, including the United Rugby Rewind, which, as I said, I was on this week to discuss everything from why I think the next month is going to prove whether Cardiff are real or not, why I think the Bulls are not the real deal, etc., etc. You kind of heard the same things on here, to be fair. And a big thank you, as I said last week, to our now over 1,000 subscribers. That is the goal for any page, to get there first and then move on. And hopefully there is more to come. As I always say, if you can share this show with one friend or even leave a comment, of which we may fight with you in the comments, it makes a huge difference. But from Croke Park to Durban, tried to see if I could do it. Oh, I could have said Drumcondra to Durban. I missed the opportunity there. But anyways, from Drumcondra to Durban next, where Ulster continued their unbeaten start to the season, thanks to a 34-26 win over the Sharks. I am conscious that Ben watched it originally on a phone. David was getting ready to go to Croke Park. I was sat down nicely, having a cup of soup in the Hogan stand. So I was grand. I did watch this, so I might start things off here. And like as I said on the URC show, it's a big win for Ulster, and everything is just coming together. Gerardo Augustus looks quality. Ian Henderson playing the best rugby of his life, or maybe not of his life, but you know what I mean.
Gonna
McCluskey
say
is
that's a big statement.
fantastic. Stockdale is playing unbelievably. I found out the other day, apparently he's put on like 6 kgs extra of mass, and it shows. He's been unbelievable, and Ulster get this big win. Mike Lowry and Nathan Doak, I think, are now number one or two of the most unlucky not to be in the Ireland squad. And to be quite honest, they did it in some style. That counter transition rugby that they were playing was fantastic. Some wonderful scores from Werner Koch, from Tom Stewart. We'll get on to that a little bit later. And Ben, I'll start with yourself. Like I mentioned, Doak and Lowry, excellent. Augustus as well. But this is a big win for Ulster. They've beaten back-to-back South African teams, two teams who were in the top four last year. And like this is not a game that we even had too much confidence over them as a collective last week. So
No.
fair play.
And I mean, we said in this podcast after week one that okay, Ulster were good, but just how good are Ulster? What level of Ulster are we actually going to see here? And again, we saw Nathan Doak, saw Mike Lowry, we saw James Hume, all stepped up and performed to a level that I didn't think any of us thought Ulster were really capable of this season. There isn't going to be many teams who win down in Durban, let alone perform as well and as dominant as Ulster did. I know the Sharks came back, but it was nearly a 60, 70-minute performance where everything clicks. The game plan that Murphy tried to do last year that didn't really work is now working in full flow.
They have an
Werner
identity again,
Cox,
don't they? It's
they have an
weird.
identity. It's big kicking, it's big passing, it's carrying like you want to hurt someone. When you can get Werner Koch into that back line and let him carry and let him ruck over, he's like an auxiliary flanker. Like Ulster are, and I've said this for weeks, and I know people are sick of me saying it. Ulster look really, really dangerous this year. They're going to cause teams a lot of trouble. This is just the start of it. We'll get to predictions. If they play like that again, they'll win Johannesburg.
They might do, but they are going to be without a couple of players, and we were going to mention that anyways. Sean Verfel is injured. Joanne Augustus is a doubt. They lost their Ireland contingent of Timoney, Henderson, McCluskey, and Stockdale. But at the same time, and I'm not saying these aren't big losses, because especially in the second row, it is, and back row could be potentially. But when you can replace Stockdale with Zach Ward and McCluskey with Jude Postlethwaite, like a backline in particular also have a bit of depth there. And, you know, they're coming into a team that's winning, that's high in confidence. You look at Werner Koch, and yeah, he's playing against his old team. But by God, he just hit the ground running in this game.
Yeah,
And like David, yes, it's a big win and all that is important. But it's just the manner of how Ulster did it. Like they took their points. They were clinical when they got their opportunities. They didn't tire themselves out, which is a big factor when teams go to South Africa as well. And they made the Sharks, who can be fraudulent at the best of times, look very, very fraudulent.
They did, and this wasn't even like this was a Sharks team stacked with I think they had about 12 Springboks in the ranks, so there can be no excuses from the Sharks in terms of personnel. And Ulster just continued on. I think this could have been a banana skin going down to South Africa can be difficult, although I think if memory serves me, Ulster were the first province to win a match down in South Africa. So it just continues what has been a fantastic start to the season for Ulster. They probably got lost a bit because their first game was against the Dragons, so expectations would have been high for the win right there. Their round two fixture away to Edinburgh was postponed. But then to come back to Afadia Stadium and have that win over the Bulls, quite an emphatic victory over a Bulls team who'd just beaten Leinster down in Pretoria, then to go on their away run and now be starting with one from two. As you said yourself, they're shorn of their Irish contingent, but they have the depth and they certainly have the mindset to win this game. I think Ulster will be slightly ruining the fact that they missed that trip out to Edinburgh because while they are not at the top right now, that is but for that game. They are the only team that they're not the only team to have won all their games. Munster and the Stormers have too, but they are the only team to have got the full complement of bonus points. If they picked that up against Edinburgh, they would be top of the table right now. And so I think they couldn't have asked for a better start to the season than this. And I think they are the quiet because of that missed game, because of the fact that they are technically lower on the table. I think they are almost a sleeping giant on this front in that people are maybe slightly going, oh, hang on a second, what's going on there? So I think it's a fantastic start for Ulster, and I think it's what we've kind of been hoping from them because Ulster has a quality team. They've had a quality backline for years that they just didn't seem to have the pack to be able to fully get the advantage out of. Now with Henderson playing well, with Augustus in there, it seems like they can now have a platform. They have Jack Murphy, who very young player, but he seems to be growing into that role. And he's got Nathan Doak standing next to him, who was having a great start to the season, who was really pushing for Ireland inclusion with his performances before the team sheet were named. So that half-back pairing leading that back line with at least a decent pack in front of them, and they're doing some serious damage. There'll be questions about, they conceded 26 points against the Sharks, they conceded 3 tries against the Dragons. So there are still frailties there. There's no pretending it's been a complete whitewash, but it's been a phenomenal start to the season for Ulster, who have been a team to have struggled with that in the past. And yeah, I think it'll be really interesting now to see how they do without their Ireland players. They have the benefit, obviously, of having slightly less of them, so they're losing slightly less players. But yeah, I think if they can go to Johannesburg and do what they've done and come back from South Africa with 10 points, I mean, you literally couldn't ask for a better start to the season than that.
Yeah. And like you talk about like differentials in these games and like where you're picking up points, where you're losing points, where you're expected to get points. If you come away with 6 points from South Africa, it's a bonus. I think like you're aiming for 2 to 4, maybe a win, maybe a defeat, whatever. You come away with 6 points, 7 points, maybe 10. You're in a bonus. You've already beaten the Bulls at home with a bonus point. That's already a huge one. The Dragons, fair enough. They will back themselves to beat Edinburgh if it's in a Six Nations window, because realistically, they won't be losing as many players as Edinburgh will. Um, but something I want to touch on with yourself, Ben, because I know we had this discussion last season when Ulster signed Ryan Augustus, and we'll probably come back over it so many times. Ulster wanted a second row. Ulster needed a second row. I put forward the name Ruben Nortia. I thought he is the man to really help Ulster in that engine room. They signed Joanna Augustus, big physical number 8, great ball carrier, really dynamic. And I hate using the phrase Moneyball signing. I hate it, but it kind of is a Moneyball signing when you consider they decided, right, if we can't get a second row, we'll get a big back row and we'll complement him, and things will just work out in the aggregate. That's kind of what they've done here.
Yeah, it was genius. Like we've seen for ages provinces trying to play jiggery pokery with who they bring in and how to try and fit him in. Murphy had a great idea of, okay, you won't let me have a second row. That's fine. I get it.
Well,
Who's the
we don't know if they weren't able or they just couldn't get it over the line,
they
should
couldn't
we
get
say.
a second row over the line. Better way to phrase it. But instead they went and they got a ball carrying number 8 who was a wrecking ball, who will do every single thing they wanted in their half lock and did everything for them. Augustus is currently signing of the season in GRC. He's incredible for Ulster. In my opinion, I stress people will give out to me in the comments to me, oh no, we've got whoever. Augustus has been fantastic. They're dovetailing him with a game plan that is high kicking, big chasing, big carries, and big rocks. And it's coming up dividends, as David said. They're the only team who'd get a bonus point in every game they've played so far. They'd probably have got one against Edinburgh. If they can get anything out of Saturday, you're then looking up at Ulster saying, well, now we're in big trouble here, lads.
Yeah.
You could, if Leinster wake up, you're not overly counting out an All-Irish top 4.
Honest to God, like, well, I probably would, to be honest. We'll get on to the last team in a minute. But Ulster have the Lions. They come back up. Sorry, they don't come back up north because it's a break. They'll have Benetton after the November window, where again Ulster will have most of their players together for a month. They have Leinster. David, you might know, is that game home or away? That Leinster game?
The Leinster game in December is away for Ulster.
That is away for Ulster. Fair enough.
Yeah.
That one's a little bit tricky, but they have Challenge Cup, so they have again the luxury of, let's just dovetail a couple of players in there. We don't need to go all out like their Challenge Cup pool. Again, like, fair enough, Racing will be tricky, Cardiff will be tricky, but none of those teams are going to take it that seriously. So you're like, Again, I hate being too positive on teams after just a couple of games because the Sharks were bad. The Sharks were bad. Mapimpi tr tried to get himself sent off. Masuku in that first half wouldn't hit a fecking barn door with his kicking. It was all over the shop compared to Nathan Doak, who was
There's an element the
excellent.
Sharks are always bad, but then they play in Durban and somehow the bad works
Yeah,
every time.
and sometimes they get away with it because they have Sia or they have someone else. That did not matter. Ulster were the better team for 80 minutes. And the only big concern I have about Ulster right now, it's not their attack, it's not their defense, it's not their identity. It is just from number, say, 20 to 30 in the depth chart or in the overall squad, not the depth chart. That'd be a very deep squad. Um, is the quality there? But right now, they're showing they're doing just fine. And I think that is absolutely fantastic for them. I know we all have a soft spot for Ulster. Adam in particular, he'll hopefully be back next week. And if he's coming back into it after 10 points down South Africa, I think we may just need to give him his own show for the week out of fairness. Because again, most Irish podcasts won't cover it. Before we move on to Connacht, a little bit of AIL chat. There was no men's action this week, but we did have the returning women's AIL on Pride Week as well. Galwegians moved top thanks to a 74-7 win on the road down in Tullow. Champions UL Bows remained unbeaten as they overcame former coach Fiona Hayes' Old Belvedere 36-0. Blackrock overcame the now 0 from 3 Railway. I know they've had a tough start to the season, but that is remarkable. 29-10 in Park Avenue with Munster captain Maeve O'Leary dying down twice and the returning Natasha Behan scoring as well. And elsewhere there was wins for Ballincollig over Cook and Wicklow over Ennis. Ben, really quickly, there's a all Munster affair between Bows and Ennis next week. You'd imagine Bows will win even if they do rotate. But Galwegians are kind of the story they're kicking on there. Bows are plugging away nicely, but so too Black Rock. They've kind of been a team that because they've so many Ireland internationals, they don't do well at AIL. They've started pretty solid here.
No, BlackRock are looking fantastic. They really are. Galwegians, as we said, look, they're doing kind of what a lot of us said pre-season they would do, where they're just picking up wins, slowly but surely trucking through, beating teams that are below their level. Bows, Bows should be Dennis. I don't like counting chickens. We'd expect Bows will get a win again the weekend. I'm glad you mentioned it. Railway are for me the story of Women's AL at the minute. I know they've had a tough start. I know they're missing some players, but for a team of Railway stature, going on 3 really isn't acceptable currently. And they haven't even. I've watched some of the highlights. They haven't played all that well. They seem disjointed. They look like a team who don't really know where they want to go next. And when you compare it to Belvedere, as said, Fiona has come in and is coaching them quite well. You do wonder where Railway are going to start picking up points.
Yeah.
Ennis are playing
But
really well. Wicklow playing really well. Galwegians look, as we've said, as good as any other team in the country. You're starting to kind of say Railway have to start kicking into gear now and
yeah, they
quickly.
do. They really do. And like you'd still back them to get to the semi-finals in particular
Yes.
or into the final five, whatever it might be. But they do need to start picking up wins and they need to prove to themselves that it's fine. It was just 3 games. It was just a blip. Kind of similar to Leinster. You still back them. But and that wasn't a take, David, before you assume. I know you wouldn't, but some people online might. But just prove to themselves, get that win, get that 5 points, get it under the belt, dust off the cobwebs and get going again. And of course, Galwegians is a great storyline for them. Now, as a band of slow man, watching Galwegians do well always comes with a little bit of, I'd rather not. But as someone who's hosting an Interpro show podcast, I'm absolutely delighted for Galwegians doing well in the men's and women's AIL. Um, but no, a great respect to them. Like they're flying it. Great start to the season. 74-point win over Tullow. Shows that I know there's again that little bit of a drop off as you hit the final third of the AL, but still that's you can only beat what's in front of you. But for our last feature game of the night, we're going to go to Galway and the Friday night lights as the Bulls took the spoils over Connacht in dramatic fashion at the end and after about 20 minutes and the whole way through. David, from as we said earlier on, like the the dramatics and the fisticuffs and everything in between, this was certainly, can we say it was very Connachty? Or can we just say it was very, very Friday night rugby?
It was very connected. I mean, look, there was a lot that went on in that game that wasn't necessarily involving rugby. You know, I don't know how much we want to touch on that. I have
Hey.
a lot of sympathies for those involved. No pun intended. A lot of sympathies for Josh Murphy in that situation. While understanding the decision the referee made with the evidence put in front of him. Um, it's however the rugby was nothing short of Connacht Classic. You know, there was some excellent rugby in there, 4 tries, very well taken. I do think there's going to be a question, and like you have to go when you have an opportunity to score a try, you score a try. That's kind of the way things go. But at the same time, Connacht with the way the kicks were going for them on the night to take that final try in the corner. I understand you take your try where you can get it and you figure it out from there. But there has to be a level of, oh, why did we do that? Why did we do that? Because the win was there for them. It was there, and they came so agonizingly close. And I think in the grand scheme of things, if you go, you played the Bulls and you got 2 points, you know, in the grand they'd probably go, yeah, that's not a bad return. But considering the 5 points were on offer for them there, I think they'll be very frustrated to have let that one slip out of their grasp. I thought it was a really good night for Sean Naughton. I thought, you know, this isn't a player I had a huge knowledge of before this season, but he's played in the back three a couple of times now. Now I find out he can kick as well. You know, 10 hasn't always been a position of supreme strength for Connacht. I don't know. I think he can play there as well. Like I think he had a
Came
great
through
game.
as a 10, yeah.
Yeah, there's so I thought in as a whole Connacht performance there was a lot to like about it. It's just again, and this is kind of the thing that Stuart Lancaster was kind of um hope I think we would have hoped he would bring through. Granted, this is his first season, it's only 4 games in, there's a lot of time left, there's a lot of road left. And you would hope he's given plenty more time to work it out. But I think there will be a bit of frustration in Connacht between the Cardiff game last week and then how close this one came because that's kind of what we wanted to see ironed out of Connacht's game. They are a good team. They have good players. They can clearly score excellent tries, as was evidenced in this game. It's just being able to cinch the wins that are the close ones. You know, the Cardiff game where you know they was so tight for so long, and then this one where they had the opportunity to pip it at the end. I think they will kind of look back on those two fixtures a little bit further down the line and rue the fact that they didn't take what should have been a much larger amount of points that were on offer for them there. But I think overall in terms of performance, I thought they had a good performance. They played some nice rugby and it was a lovely night in Galway, which you don't always get to say. So yeah, I think more of that from Connacht, but they do need to show that little bit more of a clinical edge and maybe a little bit more for foresight when it comes to handling where you're taking your kicks from, because otherwise this was so close to being a really vintage win for Connacht, which it would have been lovely. Sorry, I have a small animal jumping on me, but yeah, no, it was you know, Connacht would be frustrated not to get 5 points, but I think you know 2 points are not the worst thing they could have come out of this game with.
Yeah, no, definitely. And like it's that frustration. Like as I said in the URC podcast, they went like, "There's David's little kitten." Um, they
Mm.
went nearly 60 minutes with like only one line break in this game. Do you know they had these like issues of potency and breaking down the Bulls' defensive line, and the Bulls almost handed them in the end with like the nature of those last few minutes. Like the second to last try was so haphazard. The last try came because of a silly high tackle. Do you know, there's all that kind of stuff. But I do believe, with the benefit of hindsight, maybe, or maybe it's just to be antagonistic, that they were probably right to go to the corner because they actually didn't look like they were going to push the Bulls over, unfortunately, because even in the 12 phases or whatever they had, they nearly got turned over two, three times. Anyways, there was one particular one where Matthew Devine has to go in as ruck protector while Jordan Duggan stand behind him. And I'm not trying to call out these lads. I was working on the game, so I was hyper focused on it. Last play, trying to get a match report done. I was in the zone. That's why I remember this. But to me, it's like they're the little errors that I know Stuart Lancaster is going to kill them over because you cannot break down a team like the Bulls if you're 5 meters out and your nine is hitting the ruck as opposed to the prop. Do you know, things like that? And it was that the whole way through. Do you know, the scattiness. I thought Mac Hansen grew into the game, but I thought the other two Lions weren't at their best as well. And just that kind of stuff plays a part. But Ben, we have to mention the moment of this game. On like it's literally our podcast title, and we're leaving it to the last discussion point of the show. Josh Murphy is on a ruck. I actually think there's probably about 3 penalties in that ruck before anything happens.
Yes.
It was pretty messy. That's what happens with certain referees. They allow it. They allow a contest. That's absolutely fine. Same with Konecki, same with Addison. But he goes in, he falls onto the side. Sean Hendrick Vessels allegedly, now we don't have proof, allegedly grabs Murphy by the groin area, to which Murphy freaks out, throws a slap. It is a punch technically. He doesn't land the punch, but it is technically a punch. Therefore, it is a red card. Arguably fortunate there was only 20-minute red card, but it was a red card. But at the same time, it doesn't happen without the other incident, which you have to imagine did happen. But Mike Adamson can't see it clearly, so he can't give it. He is right in that instance. It's a mess, but the laws were followed properly, and realistically, the only one who's in the wrong is Murphy for acting out. Or is that unfair, even
No,
saying that?
I'm glad you mentioned the ruck in and of itself, because the incident that allegedly happens, which again we presume by mercy of reaction something did happen, is stopped if there are 3 calls made in that ruck before anything happens. There's off feet, there's in from the side, there's sealing off. Pick any of them, and it doesn't denigrate into. And I know we love allowing contest. I'm someone who waxes lyrical for ages about how I want big rucks and I want big hits and I want big jackals. But there's a point when if you're letting the ruck go into what is an SH1T storm without getting demonetized, things like this are going to happen. There is no video evidence. Adamson, to his credit, after just slating him, asks for video footage. We presume the TMO looks at every angle available. This isn't like the bite where we then see it afterwards. It isn't there. Murphy was lucky it was only 20. Connacht lucky it was only 20-minute record. You can't lash out at a player like that. It's the alleged incident is unacceptable. Doing that hand motion I know is ironic considering, but the alleged incident is wholly unacceptable. But so is responding in the way Murphy did. I think if he doesn't make the fine, he only lashes out because of the allegation, but also you can't hit another player in a rugby pitch, regardless
And
of how
even if it's spotted, even if the alleged incident is spotted, the referee still turns around and sends both of them off.
Exactly.
Do you know?
If we have a TMO come in and say this happened, it's then 2 red cards.
Yeah.
You can't swing out, unfortunately. And like very briefly, if I can, Connacht were so good for so many portions of this game, and then they did a Connacht, and Lancaster is going to be fuming because they did everything. Like those last 20 minutes, Connacht did everything right. Everything they could do to get back into that game. The Bulls look like a spent team. And I think Dave right. I think you have to try and get in a bit before you go for that line. If David has a call entirely correctly, you can't leave Knockton with that kick in Galway to win you a game.
It is one of the tougher venues. One of the only things I don't disagree with, or I do disagree with, is some people said why didn't Ford kick it? He's left-footed, but you can clearly see with the wind it's coming off the right-hand side anyway. It would have been nigh on impossible for him because you're trying to
Knockton's
move
boot
it.
was the right one to do. It was just, and it's
Yeah.
one of those things. If he gets it, he's a hero. If he gets it, he's the absolute hero, and it's a 5-try bonus point.
Yeah. Well, Jack Carthy had that kick years ago against Wasps, you may remember. Similar moment, same corner, similar wind. He nails it. But like it is a shot to nothing in that breeze in Galway. But it is frustrating for Connacht. They will look to bounce back. They have an Interbro to come next week, and I will just pull those fixtures up here momentarily because we'll get into the very brief previews that we do every week. Way too early to give Anthony of credit, really. But we start, all games are on Saturday with the Lions against Ulster, 12:45 in Johannesburg. David, actually, no, Ben, I'll start with yourself with this one because David has the next game. Ulster, if they can bounce back, absolutely fantastic. Won't be an easy task, but the Lions haven't exactly been excellent either. Like they scraped past the poor Scarlets team on home soil. They needed, the last 10 minutes and the soupy air to get over them. So Ulster will fancy their chances, providing they have enough in the legs.
Exactly. Okay, it won't be easy. It never is on South Africa. It probably has fallen exactly as Ulster would want it, though. They've got on paper a tougher game out of the way. It's how they deal with the soupy air and how they deal with the couple of injuries that they have. But Ulster will have nothing to fear going on to Lions team, who even if they can get an LBP out of that or even get 2 bonus points out of that, they'll be coming up saying cool. Depending on how bad that percentage injury report ends up being, Ulster will have a fine crack down in Joburg.
I agree. Well, David, if it's never easy down in South Africa, there's a line on Provincial State of Mind of, with the greatest respect to Zebra, but maybe we don't need to give them too much respect because not being rude, this is a game that Leinster usually win quite clinically, and you have to imagine it's going to happen again.
You have to hope it's going to happen again. Zebra, they haven't continued, unfortunately, as a part-time supporter. They started the season incredibly well and they notched some signature wins last season. They've definitely dipped back down to their old ways in the last 2 weeks, which is disappointing to see. And they certainly don't seem to be a team that goes on the road very well. But at the same time, Leinster have just lost, I think it's 21 players to the Ireland team.
22 with
If
Jimmy O'Brien, but yeah,
if reports are to be believed, it could be a very callow team that ends up being put out. Leo Cullen has already said there will be players making their debut for Leinster at this one, so it could be tough. It could be rocky. Zebra they're not a great team, but they're not atrocious anymore either. They are still, I believe, higher ranked in the table than Leinster are this season. So, while it is a victory that Leinster should be able to bank on, I think at this stage, unfortunately, and it's what we said last week before the Leinster Munster game, this is a game that Leinster need to win as much as expect to win. So, while I have full faith in Leinster to pull themselves back, they need to. And I hope that with that, it'll be week 5 with an entirely different squad to the one that played the previous game. It'll be an opportunity. And I think if there are younger players in Leinster, maybe this is a chance for them to go, to look at some of the older guys and go, well, you just didn't step up to the plate. So now I am going to, and maybe start the beginning of staking a claim to some positions. And if there's a silver lining from last week's performance, maybe that's it.
yeah, maybe it is. And look, I do believe Leinster will win this game quite convincingly. But as you said, there is context. It's a weird one because usually we don't have to apply context to Leinster, and usually it only ever is in a way that wouldn't be for other provinces. But I do think here, like 22 players is a lot, plus injuries to the likes of RK Snyman, potentially, it is a lot. The game of the week, and it will be our game of the week next week as well, is Munster against Connacht in the second interval of the season. And Ben, it's a weird one for Munster fans because, as you said before we came on, if you thought Munster had lost last week, this game becomes massive. You don't want to be going into the break week just at 3-2. Now, if Munster don't win, they have a month of questioning themselves and saying, was the Leinster game just an emotional pitch? Was it this? Was it that? They're under probably the most pressure of anyone this week, despite one of their biggest results. It's a weird one, isn't it?
Yeah, it's weirdly, yeah, it's not a good place to be. Munster have to perform on Saturday. Last week can't be we were slighted by Andy Farrell, we wanted to make a point in Croke Park. It has to be we build again, we go again. We take on a Connacht team who are going to be hurting from the past 2 weeks of the season, really. Connacht never have any fear coming down to Thomond Park. They're happy to attack, they're happy to fling the ball wide. If Munster aren't at the same pitch that we were last Saturday, then as you said, you're going into November International saying, okay, Munster picked it up for one game and now we're back to route zero again. It's an incredibly difficult game for McMillan, especially with a couple of injuries that we have and for the squad that we have. And it's actually a really tough one to call. I'm
Yeah.
nervous is the
Well,
wrong word
you
for
don't
it,
have to call it
but
yet.
no, and I'm not going to call it yet. But like it's not a great position to be in as a Munster fan, despite the fact going in with 4 wins on the bounce.
Well, this is their test, isn't it? Like we said this before,
Yeah,
Munster want to raise their floor. They want to be a more consistent team. They've said these things themselves. Mike Prendergast today spoke about how they went in on Monday and they had to just completely refocus. They could not afford to just keep looking back on last Saturday. It had to be all eyes on Connacht. They have one more big push, and then they have a month to tweak things, work on things, small evolutions, as they've had before in November time. And from a Connacht perspective, as you said, they're going to be hurting. They've had essentially, since that Benetton game, it's just been a downward slant of emotions, unfortunately. You thought they'd beat the Scarlets, gets called off. Didn't really perform against Cardiff. Didn't really perform here, but should have won it and didn't win it. They're going to be up for this, but they're without players as well. They're without their Ireland contingent. They've got a couple of extra injuries in there with the likes of Oisin Dowling, Dennis Buckley, for example. It's going to be a tricky ask. We mentioned predictions just there. We'll hold you on that for now. In the Predictions League that goes live on Twitter every week, do keep an eye out. Do follow us at the Interpro Show. I will hold my hand up. I had an absolute mare. I went 0 from 3 this week. I went for Connacht, I went for the Sharks, and I went for Leinster. So now I am in last place, having been tied for first. Small margins at the start of the season, I suppose. Ben and David, congrats. You both had 2 wins, and you both went to 11-2 with Adam sandwiched in between. But gents, we will leave it at that. We will be back next week. Next week, I don't know what we're going to do because we've got an Ireland game to discuss as well as an Interpro, as well as, Leinster against Zebra and Ulster against the Lions. I'm getting shaky here. It's a big week. It's November time. It's where you make your money as a podcast in Irish rugby. But we'll leave it at that. As always, if you like what you see here, please do like, subscribe, leave a comment, tell one friend, fight with the lads in the comment section. I don't care what it is. Do it, and we'll all be happy and we'll all be friends again in a week's time because Ireland will be off to Chicago. But from me, Kaelon, from Ben, from David, and from afar, from Adam Latham, thank you very much for joining us. Until next time, take it easy.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.